Beloved, as we move into this weekend, we now mark 11 weeks since the Pentecost season began. And because we embrace Pentecost, we embrace all that is part of becoming empowered to be witnesses of Christ in the midst of all the challenges we face. Hence, we have been talking about hope, resilience, adaptive resilience, and stability in light of all the things that this particular season has brought us in terms of having to face. And we've been looking at various passages of Scripture from week to week that are part of the readings for this season. And we come now to Genesis 45, the first 15 verses. And I think it's fascinating to look at what's here, because what's here is profoundly speaking to many of the things that we're facing. Listen carefully. I know you know the story, but just enter into a once upon a time moment and listen. It says, Joseph could no longer control himself before all those who stood before him, and he cried out, "Send everyone away from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him. So dismayed were they at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come closer to me." And they came closer. He said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now, do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are 5 more years in which there will neither be plowing nor harvest. God sent me before you to preserve you a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall settle in the land of Goshen. You shall be near me, and you and your children and your children's children, as well as your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. I will provide for you there, since there are 5 more years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have will not come to poverty. And now your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my own mouth that speaks to you. You must tell my father how greatly I am honored in Egypt, and all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here." Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, while Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. And after that, his brothers talked to him. Now, this is a profound moment of healing. It's also a profound moment of crisis and pain, because what precedes this moment reveals a number of things about how Joseph had to learn how to be resilient. It's hard for me to read these stories of Joseph and not be deeply moved. Joseph wasn't innocent in all that went on in the family pain. Jacob wasn't all that innocent either, and his brothers weren't innocent. There was so much dysfunction within that family system. There were conspiracies, there were attitudes of distrust, there were rivalries, there were jealousies, all the stuff that makes for drama and division and discord and fragmentation, and the kind of things that lead to brokenness in our own lives. Joseph endured it all, and Joseph had to process all that for the many years he was in Egypt, so that when he finally arranges for this moment, a lot has happened before he's gotten here, where he's had to deceive his brothers into bringing Benjamin, his youngest brother, who he has not seen in a long time, the brother that came from the same womb he came from. And he will not reveal himself to his brothers until he knows that Benjamin is okay. Because in the back of his mind, if they did it to me as Rachel's son, they could easily do it to Benjamin. So there's a dynamic going on here that Joseph has processed deeply. And so when he finally is able to see his brother Benjamin, and he sees that he's alive and he's well, he knows it's safe for him to disclose who he is to his brothers. He has come to an understanding of what the dream of the stalks bowing down has meant, what the sun, moon, and stars. He's come to understand it all, but from a totally different perspective than perhaps what he perceived it to be before he went through his pain, because pain provides the revelation of what our purpose is. And so when this moment builds to a climax at dinner, he puts out all of the Egyptians so that the only people in the room standing with him are Benjamin, his youngest brother, and his 10 other brothers. He sends them all out, and he begins to weep so loudly that it's heard not just in his house. The weeping and wailing is heard by all the Egyptians in the surrounding area, and it gets all the way to the ears of Pharaoh himself. So now the entire royal court is aware that Joseph is in deep pain and agony. They've never seen him in this fashion. But you've got to remember, Joseph has spent time as a slave in Potiphar's house. He's been falsely accused by Potiphar's wife. He's then been imprisoned because he was sold into slavery by his brothers. And he ends up on the auction block and is bought by Potiphar, who is the right-hand man to Pharaoh, whom he now has replaced, ironically. The man who enslaves him and owns him is the man he replaces ultimately in the providence of God. And he learns how to manage and how to steward and how to run a household based on his relationship with Potiphar, who, though he is his owner, is also his mentor. What he could have gotten from his father that he didn't get, he got from Potiphar. And so all of these areas of adaptability are beginning to be shaped and formed in the midst of his pain. And when Potiphar's wife lusts after Joseph, he refuses to compromise, and as a result, he's lied about, he's thrown into prison, and forgotten virtually, but he's with the disenfranchised, he's with the marginalized. And he finds a way, even in the midst of the depths of that kind of pain, while his feet are in irons. He's in stocks in prison, he's in irons. The book of Psalms says that his feet were in irons, and the word of the Lord tested him. That word tested there in the Psalms means tormented. I don't know about you, but there have been seasons in my life when I've gone through dark places where the promise of God has become more of a torment, but I have held on to it because I've had no other choice but to hold on to it. Adaptive resilience takes place in the midst of those kind of challenges. And when he begins to touch that pain in this moment of self-disclosure, his brothers don't know now what to do, because now they realize all these years that they have tried to suppress and bury their own unfinished business. He now has the power to do to them what's been done to him. Joseph is profoundly aware of the situation he's in and in his surroundings. He's developed that over 13 years of the pain he's been through. You can't be resilient without going through the kinds of things that make you profoundly aware of the situation you're in and the surroundings you're in. And he's had to develop that awareness precisely through the kind of things he's had to face and admit. He's become what we would say today emotionally intelligent, self-aware, other-aware. He's aware of his own emotional responses, and he's aware of the responses and the behaviors of all those that are around him. So imagine you're in this room, and to the shock of the 10 brothers and to Benjamin, this one they don't recognize because he is dressed in a manner that is congruent with an Egyptian. He doesn't look anything like he did as a young man in terms of the way he's shaven and the way he carries himself. He is styled after the culture of Egypt. They don't recognize him until he begins to give voice to his pain. And in the midst of his pain, he knows what's caused his painful feelings. And he, because he knows what's caused them, has had to learn how to manage them. I'm talking about being adaptive and resilient. Learning how to manage your painful feelings requires owning them so that you can manage them. And he's come to a place in his life where he refuses to ignore his pain or think it isn't there or ignore any future pain, because his pain has become his greatest teacher. And you listen to him talk with his brothers about how he's come to adapt the narrative itself. And he says, you sold me into slavery, but God sent me here. Now, that didn't happen overnight. He was wrestling with the fact that my brothers betrayed me for a long time. But somewhere in that journey, by the grace of God, he began to discover a different way to explain what was going on, because he still had that dream. He still had that promise, and subtly, subconsciously, continually, that dream kept speaking to him of a future that he couldn't quite fully grasp, but knew was assured. Like his great-grandfather Abraham, he was moving in hope against hope. And he's had to learn all the way from the pit to Potiphar's house, to the prison, to the palace. He's had to learn how to be adaptable, how to be flexible. He's had to learn how to be open when it would have been really easy to shut down and be closed. See, resilience, when you can find resilience in your life, you'll discover there's a transparency and an openness that makes you fearless. Because you almost get to a place where it's not that you don't care what other people think, but you become relaxed enough in who you are to realize that everyone's got to face their own issues, and you can be transparent, even if in that transparency, others have to own where they are, because you can't own that for him. He's proven he's able to adapt to change. And because of that, he says to his brothers, come close to me. Jesus says to Thomas, 8 days after the resurrection, you weren't here last Sunday when I showed up, and you said, unless I put my hand in the wound in his hand and put my hand in his side, I won't believe. And Jesus removes the portion of his robe where his wound is and lets out his hand. He says, come on, touch me and see. Jesus is drawing Thomas near to his own pain and wounding, because he's learned how to be resilient and flexible. His pain and his purpose are uniquely and intricately and inexorably tied together. And Thomas gets a revelation from the pain of Jesus. And the revelation is one of love and grace and forgiveness, intimacy, self-disclosure, transparency, authenticity. Here's Joseph, rejected and betrayed by his brothers, saying, come close to me. The solution is not be at a distance. The solution is I need to bring you in. You know, there was a book written, it was a bestseller a number of years back, Keep Your Friends Close, But Your Enemies Closer. Jesus tells us to love our enemies for a reason, a sound psychological reason, because the ultimate goal of the Father is to win them, because you and I were enemies of Christ, and he reconciled us to himself by bringing us close to his pain. We met him at the cross. And we usually come to the cross out of our own weakness, our own pain, and our own shame, because he identifies with us fully. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace fell upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. And so Joseph twice says, come close to me. At the beginning of his wailing, and then when he tells them the whole story of how he has learned to reinterpret the circumstances in life in light of the promise of God, and how now he is there to serve them. The ones who excluded him, he now has grace to include them in spite of the way they excluded him. And he's going to care for them. He's going to love them. He's going to provide for them. He's going to feed them. He's going to assure them that their future is as bright as the promises of God. That doesn't come out of anywhere. That comes out of learning to be adaptably resilient from the pain in life that becomes the greatest gift to teach us that God is able to do exceeding abundantly, above and beyond all we could ask or think or even imagine. Sunday, we're going to continue to look at this whole issue of adaptive resilience. We're going to take a deeper dive into one of the parables of Jesus and one of the interactions between Jesus and the disciples. I promise it's going to be enriching and enlarging. As always, I want to encourage you to take notes, go back and reflect, go back and listen to the many messages we've been sharing the last few weeks, and let the layered learning of that build in you as we are in this season of high hope. God is up to something good. Sunday, as it has been, if you need to be online, you will be online. If you want to be in the building, you can be in the building. If you want to be in the parking lot, however we come together, let's come together from a place of flexibility, adaptability, and a willingness to be transparent, authentic, touchable, and real. Because that's what God is looking for in us. Let's draw near to Him so that He can draw near to us. I love you. I'll see you Sunday.